Darwin Thompson made the most of this opportunity that he had. He talked about after the game. He said it's just preparation meets an opportunity, and that's really what it came to today. And I'm glad that Darwin Thompson got this opportunity to play, put some good game film out there because he hasn't gotten the chance to play since Le'Veon Bell came into the mix.
Hmm.
And he said he's learned a lot from a lot of the guys in the locker room. He just likes to ball out, is what he said. He's like, I can't lie to people. Like, practices aren't my favorite, but I like to ball out, is what he said. So
Hmm.
it was good to see him go out there. That first screen pass was awesome to see him really showcase his speed and showcase his abilities in the open field because that's something we don't really get to see that often.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was really, really excited when the Chiefs drafted Darwin Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
He had a great season at Utah State heading into that draft. He was a guy, he's undersized. He's never going to be your bell cow running back, but he's a guy who we saw in the preseason, his first preseason, what he can do when he gets in space. People bought into the hype. It never came to fruition. He had 1 touchdown last year, 2 on this season.
Yep.
He had a really good game in this one. I mean, he was running the ball somewhat effectively. He was picking up tough yards, which I didn't expect from a guy like him. I think some of that had to do with the offensive line actually played a solid game. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see compared to previous weeks, they actually weren't bad, but Darwin in the receiving game is something I was really, really happy with because he had that touchdown. He
Yes.
gets in space and he can make stuff happen. I mean, the guy played a really solid game and it couldn't have happened to a better kid. Like he just seems so happy to get out there and make plays happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. He talked about it in his post-game press conference too about how he's really tried to improve his pass catching game. And you got to see
Yes.
that on Sunday. It's exciting to see him develop in the pass catching in the passing game because that's really what you want Chiefs running backs to be good at, right? Is catching the ball from Patrick Mahomes. You don't want them, well, I guess you can have them good at running the ball, but that goes back to the offensive line, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Yep.
But what they can control is the pass catching. And he's gotten pretty good at it. I believe he was the leading receiver and rusher today.
Yes.
So he
Yep.
he had a heck of a day. Glad it happened to him. Like you mentioned, just a great guy. He said that he had to stay positive when Le'Veon Bell came in because there's too many people looking up to him. And just
Mhm.
hear him say that, that's just one of those things. You're like, man, this dude's doing something here that is
He
going to
gets
be
it.
special. He does. He gets it.
Yep.
And I'm excited that he got this opportunity to really showcase what he has, whether if it's in Kansas City or if it's not. I hope that he gets a true shot in the league.
Well, and he started off the season so poorly and had that fumble and then came in and I
Hmm.
think like had a bad drop or another fumble and everyone said cut Darwin Thompson, he's worthless. Like the guy got dragged through the mud and
He
people
did.
didn't like him because he's small. He's not very good in pass protection at all. He did have, I believe, a couple solid pass pro reps, which is
Hmm.
really promising moving forward. I think he's worked on that. But I mean, the guy couldn't have got worse breaks this season.
Yeah.
Then Le'Veon Bell comes in and he's down in the dumps on the depth chart. Darrell Williams and Le'Veon Bell and Clyde Edwards-Helaire are ahead of him. So this was perfect for him. Like preparation, it's
Hmm.
opportunity. This is that personified.
I hate to be, kind of look too far ahead here, but Darrell Williams will come back.
Yeah,
Damian Williams, I should say. Um, oof,
sure.
we've been talking about the barrel too much, I guess. So he's just stuck in my head. Damian Williams is going to come back. Le'Veon Bell more than likely won't be in Kansas City next season. So the future of Darwin Thompson kind of hinged on today. If you think
Yeah.
about it, this was really an extended interview for Darwin Thompson, and I think he did a really good job. I think he nailed it. Another guy that also had an extended interview and did a pretty darn good job is Byron Pringle. You and I have been big on the Byron Pringle train for a while.
Yeah.
Since Sammy Watkins went down, I think we wanted to see a lot of Byron Pringle. Then we ended up seeing a lot of Demarcus Robinson. But seeing what Byron Pringle can do in the pass catching game, his speed is something that isn't talked about a whole lot, but I think is a very
Mhm.
undervalued trait of his. I think that he could be a piece for this Chiefs wide receiver core for years to come.
No, I do too. And McCall Hardman is just, it's the same thing. And he's not a bad player, but like he struggles to be consistent with his hands. He struggles in the return game. He's limited offensively. Like he
Yeah.
is what he is. He's kind of a gadget player. You manufacture his touches sometimes. he's a guy who should have had 100 yards in this game. He should
Mhm.
have went off and had the bulk of the receptions, the bulk of the yards. He should have had a touchdown, and he finishes with 2 catches for 25 yards. Like, that is McCall Hardman's just someone you can't expect a whole lot out of. Demarcus Robinson, he had a solid game, but it's the same thing. He kind of makes some boneheaded plays every once in a while. Byron Pringle doesn't do anything at a high level, but he does pretty much everything well. He runs
Mhm.
decent routes. He has reliable hands. He's a good athlete, not a phenomenal one. He just does stuff. He's where he's supposed to be. He's reliable. And I think that's what your wide receiver 3 should be for the Chiefs. I mean, you have Sammy Watkins, who's Mr. Reliable,
Mhm.
like a turbo version of Byron Pringle. Then you have Byron Pringle, who's reliable, and then you have the guys under him. So I know that it's kind of weird and late in the season to be making those types of adjustments, but heading into next year, I would have Pringle probably as the third wide receiver, assuming the Chiefs can bring him back, which isn't really a foregone conclusion considering he's been putting out good tape when he gets opportunities.
That's a good point. This is the second touchdown, I believe, of not Sammy Watkins. Wow, I just think that he's Sammy Watkins in my head already. Byron Pringle's season, because he had the kickoff return for a touchdown,
Yep.
102 yards, 103 yards in Denver. Byron shows that he's pretty good in the special teams game as well.
Yeah.
So he's valuable for the Chiefs. I really do think so. And we talk about the future of the wide receiver core a lot, and I don't think we talk about him enough when it comes to the future. I just think that's something because we don't see him a whole lot, and now we
Yeah.
finally got the chance to actually see him, and he thrived. He did really well, and I was happy
Mhm.
with what he showed, and really with both Darwin Thompson and Byron
Yeah.
Pringle. You got to be happy with Brett Veach making those picks, right? I mean, those are two good picks that you don't see every Sunday, but are obviously good picks. They're NFL players and they're going to be solid NFL players, but you just have to give them some time and some development. And that's really encouraging. Is there anyone else that you kind of saw maybe on the defensive side of the ball that stood out to you? I thought the defense was kind of ho hum. I didn't look too much into them because
Yeah.
I wasn't impressed, I should say.
Yeah. Um, Quickly before we jump on to defense, I had a comp that popped into my head.
Go
I
ahead.
think that Byron Pringle is the Rashad Fenton of the offense. Like,
Okay.
he's a guy who he's Mr. Reliable because Fenton can do a little bit of everything. He does it all at a good level, but he has guys ahead of him who, even if their production is a little more inconsistent, we've seen the ceiling or the capability or the traits of those guys. They're just stuck behind other people on the depth chart because they don't have one go to
Yep.
lockdown trait or attribute or whatever. So I was watching the game and it was like back to back. Like Fenton would have a return and then make a play on defense, and then it would go to the offense and Pringle would make a play. I was like, they kind of remind me of each other a little bit,
Hmm.
where they're underappreciated because they don't dominate, but they're always where they're supposed to be.